All right. Excellent. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to the podcast. I'm Rich Rosen, founder of Cornerstone Search, all SaaS recruiting nationwide for startup software companies. And today I've got someone who is not just leading the ERP space, but kind of redefining what's going on in that world. Joining me as co-CEO and co-founder of Everest. If you don't know him yet, you're about to. Absolutely phenomenal guy. We're going to talk about automation, scalability, and really how Everest is really helping companies stop duct taping old systems and finally run like a modern opportunity and operation. So, Sandeep, welcome to the show.
Oh, great, Rich. Thanks for being here.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you could make it. Hey, Sandeep, tell me about yourself. How did you end up here at Everest?
Yeah, Rich, my journey is actually a diverse one. I started my career actually in management consulting in a new service line area at Deloitte in security and privacy. And what I really learned there was how a Big Four brings a new service line to market and how much they're relying on their partnerships and alliance partners, specifically SAP and Oracle, to drive a lot of their business. So it was a mix really of bringing software and services together. After that, I spent some years doing product management work in startups in application infrastructure and security, landed up at a company called Veeva, ended up running their product line for quality and manufacturing for the pharmaceutical life sciences industry. And ultimately, after that, those experiences, and Veeva really was driving this concept of the industry cloud, deep industry-specific applications for life sciences. And after that, I landed up as an entrepreneur in residence in Sutter Hill. And at Sutter Hill, we helped incubate Everest.
Excellent. I mean, how did that come to be? I mean, it's an interesting journey. How to go from, Veeva to Sutter Hill to starting this kind of revolutionary ERP product, though. I mean, it's a unique journey.
Yeah, I think one of the things about, there's a lot of incubation, a lot of firms out there helping incubate companies, but there's certain kinds of ideas, ERP, I think maybe at the top of the list, that require deep domain expertise, deep focus, long-term bets. And I think Sutter Hill is the type of venture firm that can help get that type of company started. And that was the reason for being there. And it's through Sutter Hill that I met my co-founder, co-CEO, Franz Ferber, and our third founder, Joachim Fitzer, who are ex-SAP technology executives. And that really gave us, from the people standpoint, the foundation, the right team, the right investors to start on this journey.
Absolutely. I mean, so talk to us. I mean, as far as, Everest goes, I mean, what are you guys doing that's, truly redefining? I mean, this has been a space that's been dominated for years, obviously. That's been screaming, in my opinion, as someone who's worked in this world for 30 years, been screaming, for something new and innovative. I mean, talk to us about Everest, what you guys are doing, what you're doing different, what you're doing better, how it's taken on the big guys, how you guys have gotten the takeaways for the competitive takeaways already, which is amazing.
Yeah, I think one of the advantages that we had early on, even back in 2020 when we started the company, is we were willing to play the long game from the start. And so that meant we spent multiple years in development in stealth. In fact, 4 years in development in stealth, building out what we think is a next generation of ERP platform from the start. And I think there's two ways to look at it. I think it's business software, so you have to look at it from the technology standpoint and the business standpoint together. So if you look at business, you mentioned the last set of ERPs really were built 25, 30 years ago. The internet had just come around, so they were internet-based applications and application platforms. But the companies that they were serving were still very much traditional brick and mortar manufacturing companies. Well, what's changed in the world is obviously every business in the last 20, 25 years is to some extent becoming a software business. And the software industry itself is really iterating fast on the kinds of business models it's able to use to support software, starting with subscriptions, consumption, outcome-based pricing, and all these different business models. While they're great for getting products to market and testing what's working, they put a ton of pressure on your ERP to get the processes right to enable that type of scale and growth. And so that's really, from a business process standpoint, that's what our system enables kind of right out of the box, an integrated system to kind of help run modern software and technology companies much faster and more efficiently. On the technology side, what we really focused on is how do we enable change management and customization to happen much faster than ever before, and including using AI technology today. And what I mean by that is, if you look at what makes older ERP systems so brittle and hard to use and hard to change, is that you've got to get the data in the systems right. I mean, it's your financial data. It's the most important data of your company. If you get it wrong, there's big consequences. And in order to get everything right, these systems end up being very rigid and hard to change. So what we've really invented is technology that gives you the best of both worlds. It gives you the power of the platform and the reliability of the ERP, along with the flexibility to change anything in the system at any point in time.
Which is amazing. And you guys, I mean, if I'm right, one of the big advantages for Everest is that, using this AI platform, you can have unlimited sandboxes. You're not just tied to, hey, here's one or two things that you can try to fix and hope you get it right and keep going in and out of it. That's talk to me about the AI, the sandbox issue, because I think that's a massive, plus for you guys.
Absolutely. I think a lot of what's happened in the business software world is as developer tools have gotten more and more productive, the business world has not kept up with what these tools can do. So developers for decades have had the ability to be able to make code changes, track versions, check in the impact of their code before they make changes to the system. Well, those ideas simply haven't been true in the business world. If you want to make changes to contracts or do complex calculations, people are doing all this stuff outside the system even today in Excel. Now, Excel will live forever, but a lot of these business processes really should be modeled in, these scenarios, these what-if scenarios really should be modeled in the system. So what we're really bringing is kind of developer thinking, but modernized and delivered in the user experience that's really suitable for the business audience. So they're able to do many of the things that developers do. And now with AI in particular, you mentioned AI, what we're using AI to do is to get business users to be able to build features on their own.
Wow.
So build custom reports, build dashboards. Historically, they've had to rely on IT, advanced support, professional services, and that just slows the business down. People just don't do it most of the times. They don't implement many of the great ideas they have. They get left on spreadsheets and they post the final answer to the ERP system. Now they can do the work inside the ERP system, build on their own.
So can the business user, can they go in there, the actual business user go in there, hey, I'm going to create this dashboard or this extra report without any IT involvement essentially?
Absolutely. And in our first deployments, including some of the replacements of the legacy ERPs that we have, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing examples of customers that are building new things on their own in the system, building new functionality. They're, for example, trying out contracts that haven't closed yet. They're reviewing these contracts in a what-if mode with their executive team. Their CEO is logged into the ERP system. What impact will this deal have to my end of quarter? And if they like how the deal is structured, then they're able to, all business people without IT, be able to review it, publish it inside the system, just like you review and publish changes inside a document.
That's amazing. I mean, because one of the things I hear from sales reps and just executives all the time is, they're stuck on these systems that are so rigid. They're just so hard to maneuver, so hard to move anything around. And they feel trapped. But they're, you get locked in with these crazy pricing and everything else. How are you guys attacking the market then? You've got obviously modern next gen technology. Talk to me how you're competing with the big guys and taking that business away.
We're starting in the mid-market, and we're starting to first focus on software and SaaS companies and technology companies in general. And in the mid-market, there's a natural inflection point, if you will, for many companies as they graduate from QuickBooks or a bookkeeping system to their first ERP system. So we're certainly in those opportunities. But importantly, we're also doing takeaways of competitive and legacy ERP systems where companies have simply hadn't had a great and positive experience. It's working for them. Clearly, it gets the job done. They have to have a system like this, but it isn't really helping run their business a lot more efficiently. So the promise is not being realized. And so we're doing those as well.
Beautiful. With these companies, with these, just heavy manufactured systems, they're, like you said at the beginning, they're great for legacy companies. They're great for, whatever, Gillette, who's building manufacturing products. But they've got so many different bolt-ons. It's this whole Frankenstein type solution. And I think that's for you guys to really, really step up.
I argue, Rich, that I think really incrementally every company out there to some extent is becoming a software and technology company.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just take the example for Gillette. There's Gillette, and there's many players in that space that are trying to sell shaving, which is a 100-plus-year-old product, right? But they're trying to sell those kinds of products on a subscription, and they're directly delivering that product over the internet. Mm-hmm. And so you look at what's happening in the world now is everyone's trying to take these concepts of how do I make my revenue model more like a technology company? How do I make it recurring? How do I deliver more and more value over time? How do I upsell that customer to sell them more products? So I think we're starting in SaaS software, but this type of thinking is going to impact many different industries, including some traditional ones too.
It has to, because you're right. Everything. I mean, even think of something that's not a subscription now from your HP and their scam of running everything through. They make you buy their ink and everything. It's not just a printer anymore. I mean, everything has become a SaaS solution now. So I think you're right. I mean, I think you guys are on absolutely the right path of where you're going to go, and where the the industry is going in general. Everything is going down this SaaS route if it's not already there. I mean, from airline tickets, everyone does everything online now. To, like you said, shaving to whatever. So it's an impressive way to attack it. I mean, what's the vision? I mean, where do you guys, you guys are, you're just getting launched now. We've got, I think, 10 plus clients, I think, so far, right? I mean, what's the next step? What's the vision look like for Everest? How are you, these companies have already got, do we have, any kind of seen ROIs yet that we can talk and tell people about, so where they can really see the savings from a tech footprint, the timing, revenue costs, etc.?
Well, I think, one is you're going to be able to run, the savings that we're going to see are going to be, I think, a couple of different dimensions. One is we're seeing savings, you'll be able to run these kinds of systems with smaller teams. But I think more importantly, you're going to be able to make changes to your business a lot faster. So if you want to try out a new product strategy, or be able to figure out if you can launch a new product by the end of the year or by Christmas time, or you want to be able to experiment on the pricing strategies of a usage or a consumption product, you're going to be able to kind of do the analysis in the system, which allows for these larger objectives to happen, whether it's product and pricing changes, whether it's a company acquisition and integration. I think that's the real value of these systems over time. Absolutely.
I mean, I think that's the joy of AI, the flexibility that you guys that it just brings to everything. Just, that it allows you to just be able to do so much more. And I think, one of the other advantages, I think when I look at Everest is, you don't have to have all these additional add-ons. I mean, talk to us about that. I mean, because that's one of the things I look at is you don't need to add, a subscription billing system and, this other finance piece, everything in the recurring, order management stuff, everything's there.
Well, I think that's it's one thing to have great technology, but ultimately you've got to be able to apply it to business processes that stitch together. Because the alternative the customer has is they can buy a bunch of point solutions, and that strategy does work for a while. Some of these solutions are easy to deploy, but then when you have to make changes to your business in any material way, you have to propagate those changes through an order management system, through a billing system, figure out the complicated accounting impacts on revenue and costs downstream from that, figure out what your cloud costs are going to be, figure out your people costs. So all of this stuff to manage, again, it can all be done in many different applications, and you could stitch it all together. But when it comes down then to running your business, making changes, you have to then propagate those changes through so many different systems with different data models and architectures. It's what slows your business down.
Absolutely. Well, what are some of the challenges you guys have seen in the early days? I mean, it's always funner to be at a startup, right? There's never surprises and everything runs smooth.
Well, I think there's always, you're always on the journey and changing your strategies all along. I guess I'd say, one of the early surprises at the company has been, for me, and I think this has actually been a positive one, is we thought in our thinking model early on that, what, we're going to have to enter the market with only QuickBooks upgrades from these bookkeeping systems. And one of the things I've been surprised by is that there's so much pain in the market that even people with existing entrenched mid-market, these financial system deployments, they're willing to work with a new vendor on a journey. Well, some companies have had these systems for years. They've already gone through 1, 2, 3 implementation cycles. Mm-hmm. So they have the scars, but despite the scars they have, what they have realized from all those experiences is, well, what are they going to end up building if the company continues to grow? And they don't want to follow that path for another 5 to 10 years. And so I think they're willing to make a different strategic bet. I think that's been really positive to see, because I think the value of a system like ours certainly scales with the complexity and the kinds of challenges the company needs to solve as it grows up.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's so funny. I mean, I find so many people get nervous about startups and they forget how much innovation comes from these early stage companies. And they see these big companies, they're afraid to leave them, but they just get left behind as a company, no matter what the product is. It always amazes me. There's some companies that, all you're doing, we're buying IBM, Oracle, and, or SAP solutions. That's it. And they just miss out. And I think they fall behind. I mean, have you guys seen any, I guess, the nervousness? I mean, I guess, how do you get people over that nervousness? Because it's always there. But how have you been able to get people over the hump to say, listen, this thing is revolutionary and is going to make my life that much easier in the long run?
I think the biggest thing is in the sales process. I mean, from the first touch point, but especially as you get involved deeper in the sales process, and then more importantly, even through implementation, that you're building trust along the way. And I think that the way that you build trust is through, I think, the expertise that's part of the definition of your product. So it's inside your product. It shows up in the product. And I think importantly also in what kinds of people you have and how they're discovering the requirements of the customers, right? When a customer finds out, and they've been in the industry themselves for 10, 20, 25 years, and they can tell when you're asking them deep and thoughtful questions about their business, and through that, you're able to adjust how you present your solution to the customer. Oftentimes, it makes them think differently of how to run their business, regardless of whether they deploy your software or not, right? And that's value you're providing to them just through the knowledge of the industry and the processes. And I think as you build that relationship and that trust through every interaction, what you're really becoming is a strategic partner to that company to help grow. And that's just, of course, a big part of that software. We're a software company, but a lot of that around the software is the people.
I got to tell you, I think people are, to me, as someone who's helped build companies for 30 years, I think, as I told you, the reason I wanted to help you and do this podcast is because I just think you remind me very much of like the Tableau mentality. It's just like treat people well, actually listening to ideas, not being say, hey, this is the only way I'm doing it. And not that you're, changing lanes, but you're open to understanding how to get better. And I just find so many software companies are not willing to make that investment in their people, not willing to listen, and just so steadfast. We've got to do it my way, and it's only my way. I'm the boss, and it's a horrible way to think.
I think that's the way to be successful. I think when you're doing something mission critical for companies, to assume that you know better than them about how to run their business, I think is a level of arrogance, I think, that always catches up to you. Mm-hmm. I think you can have a strong point of view, that you've observed these patterns, you've hired experts, you've really put a lot of thought into the product. You can make your argument, but it has to be a consultative conversation. And the reality is when the conversation is like that, oftentimes it's not, how do I blame the software vendor when something goes wrong in my company? The customer's also taking ownership of things they could do better automatically because it's a conversation all along. The quotes that I love to see from our customers that we're getting is that we're working together to find a better solution for their company. Because that's authentically the value of these types of systems anyhow.
I agree. I think that's the hallmark of any good young company, let alone good older, bigger, larger companies. You actually want to do, I think sales has such a negative connotation. And good salespeople actually want to help. They actually want to educate. They actually want to do something that's better for their clients, not just get a big commission check. And I think the way you guys approach the market and approach your clients, I think very much shows that. That's why that was the hallmark of Tableau. That's why everyone loved Tableau back in the day. They were getting built up. And I think you guys very much embody that same spirit and mentality of, you treat not just your customers first, but your employees first as well. Everyone is there to make everything better. Which I think is a special way to hire, and it's what makes you guys, I think, a very formidable force, for the years to come. It's one of those areas I think companies and candidates alike, and anyone, buyers even, I think they miss out on. It's a lot easier to do business with people you like. So I think it makes it easy. But I guess, talk to me about that. Talk to me about, clients that may have come to you guys with a mess and how you guys were able to help clean up the story, or clean up their situation.
Yeah, one of our first customers was a replacement of a legacy ERP. It was NetSuite in this particular case, and they'd implemented NetSuite over 18 months and spent a couple $100,000 in implementation costs alone, right? And as I mentioned, that's not just about the software. It's about the software, the people, the implementation, the professional services company they would have worked with, some of the decisions that they made alongside all the other folks involved. And what they still ended up with was a system where a lot of the work, believe it or not, 75 to 80% of the work, despite the 18 months being spent, was still being done outside the system. Jeez. Right? It's still being done on spreadsheets. So the system does work, but it's not driving the efficiency, the productivity to really drive the business forward as much as it could. And so we were able to do an end-to-end implementation of ERP spanning all the way from order to cash through record to report, the core financial processes of the company in less than 3 months, including the replacement, the migration of the previous system they did. And I think they're off and running, closing their books. and running their business most importantly, right? They're running their business differently, right? Are they running it more efficiently? They're able to get more executives to be involved in the system so they can see the outputs of the system as part of their decision-making process. That's the true value of being able to do the implementation and the software right together.
Yeah, to get it done that quickly, and this is fantastic. I mean, it says a lot about the product and the ease of use, I'm assuming, too, let alone the integrations, how easily it integrates to other solutions out there.
Absolutely. A big part of these systems is, like as I mentioned, yes, you can have an integrated business processes, but like at the end of the day, the company is more than a set of business processes that are core financials and ERP. It's got a lot of touch points. The touch points could be it could be a spend management system on credit cards. The touch points could be the source of your people costs from a PEO or a payroll system. So there's always going to be some touch points a system like an ERP needs, because all that feeds into the ERP is ultimately where your financials come out of that. And so a big part of making customers successful is by being able to package all these integrations, deliver them with kind of one throat to choke. So we're responsible for them, not just our product, but the integrations themselves and the implementation, and be able to make successful from that point on.
Now, I think that's fantastic. I mean, it's kind of a lighter tech footprint solution that still has this speed and agility to move around the entire systems, grab all that information, and really, allow you to assemble everything, 1, 2, 3 as the end user and as, quite frankly, people implementing it, which
Absolutely.
is half the battle. I mean, how many stories have we heard about these bigger competitors, shall we say, just, as you just said, like, they take 18 months to get stuff installed. I mean, that's, essentially 2 years essentially for companies to lose out on the efficiencies that these softwares should have brought. And I got to tell you, that's why I love startups, because I think a well-run company and a company with solid vision, they add so much more to the market, because these companies, they can move quicker and faster, and generally, generally better software. The bigger is not always better. It's just safer sometimes, but it's not better, and it doesn't actually help you improve your business. So I think what you guys have been able to do has been fantastic for, in getting out of the block so quick. So, as far as, people evaluating, Everest, I mean, anything you've seen, like certain verticals, I know we're all going after SaaS market, but certain verticals having more success or more interest?
I think we are, yeah. So from our outbound motion, yes, we're targeting more SaaS software companies today. But we have gotten inbound interest. In fact, one of our first deals was actually, believe it or not, an energy services company. And I think in this day and age, one of the things in being able to deploy flexibly, you can have an end-to-end system like we do, but you still want to have a deployment model that's flexible. So what I mean by that is you can deploy our product modularly and deploy more pieces of it over time as you expand your business process footprint with our product. So I think I'd say outbound motion is more SaaS software focused. On the inbound side, we're getting interest across industries. And yes, we are also investing in our product to support future outbound motions where SaaS-like business models, subscription models, consumption models are becoming increasingly relevant in other industries as well.
Interesting. Well, let me ask you kind of an oddball question. I'm curious, what is something you kind of had to unlearn about the ERP space over the last few years? You went in as a working for Sutter, looking into these problems. I mean, is there anything that came out of it that just surprised you? And you're like, that's just a myth, or that was, more correct than we even realized in some respects.
Yeah, I guess I'd say maybe I don't know if I unlearned it, because I didn't come from this market. I didn't come from the ERP market. I came from adjacent markets and business software. So one of the things I think I had to learn about the ERP market and actually appreciate it is that, a lot of the times when you go through startups, and you do the kind of the classic 1.0 thinking, you try to find a specific focus area and you say, I'm going to get really good at that one application or that one use case or one line of business. In fact, you don't want to boil the ocean, right? That's the death of a startup. What I guess I'd say is sometimes you have to unlearn that thinking. Is that I'm not advocating that you should absolutely boil the ocean in every way, but when the world is changing so fast with AI, with the speed of development is changing so fast, and when people can build on their own, one of the things I had to learn was how to discount that thinking, meaning, yes, it's still great to be good at one application, one use case in terms of a deployment strategy. You start with one at a particular company, but in terms of your overall product strategy, sometimes you do win by solving an end-to-end problem and taking a bigger chunk out of that ocean and saying you can do it end-to-end, but you were flexible to start small. So I think that was probably my biggest learning in getting going on this market, is that actually the value of an ERP is as true as it's ever been. It's that when it hasn't been adopted to the modern ways of working and being able to be delivered in a flexible, modular way, then the value of it's not being realized.
Mm-hmm. Very, very true. And it's tough. With ERP, it's such an all-encompassing solution. It's hard. I mean, a lot of companies, they just focus on one little piece of this or one little piece of that. But then you end up back with these other solutions where you got things glued together and things don't always tie together well with updates. They screw things up left and right.
Right.
So
as long as I've been in software, right, people always make these arguments about best of breed versus best of suite, right? Mm-hmm. And I guess what I'd like to say is, well, you can kind of actually have it both ways. I think it's actually probably better for you in this market to have a best of suite, but to know what to be best of breed within that best of suite and to know thoughtfully where the right integration points are to bring the other point solutions in.
I agree. Because you know what? There's certain parts of everything that just aren't going to be the best, right? Sometimes you need an expert, surgeon for a certain piece of the puzzle. So I think you're right. Which kind of brings me to kind of the leadership side of things. I mean, from a leadership lesson, I mean, what's, again, going back to the startup mentality, coming from watching Aviva grow and then, being involved with different Sutter Hill plays. I mean, what have you seen here from a leadership standpoint that surprised you? That's been an interesting, part of this journey. I mean, it's already been, like you said, 4 years in the building of it, which is crazy. And listen, I think it's a testament to the investors in, I think yourself, and to the idea that they were smart enough to give the runway that they did. And I mean that seriously. I just see all these so many startups that are just like, the VCs are like, nope, we got to have it. We need a return tomorrow. And then you end up putting garbage out in the market. I mean, you guys were given a great runway, which is amazing.
Yeah, I think you've got to have the right people believing in the folks starting the company, believing in the market and the possibilities. And you're right, it takes guts to be able to do that. And without that, I think this isn't even possible. So certainly, we're grateful for all the partnerships we've had with our key investors to be able to even get to this point. I think the other thing that's unique about this setup is we are a bicontinental company. We are a European and I would say more specifically a German-American company. My co-founders are in Germany. They actually come from the ERP market. They have the deep technology expertise and the decades of experience of being the largest company in the world in this market. And so I think that was part of, the leadership and the organization of the company is, how do you build a global company not, in year 5 or year 8, which is what my companies get to. They start someplace in R&D and then they grow to market some other place over time, in particular the US market. But how do you build a global company from the start? And so we had Germany, the US, fairly early on we had Brazil, and now, and after that London. And so we've had kind of 4 sites for the majority of the company's history. And so you've got sites with kind of different centers of excellence, different cultural orientation, and you have to kind of bring it to a cohesive whole to ultimately build a product and the way of selling, way of delivering that all works well together.
Which has been amazing. I mean, the folks that we've been able to place with you and we've got to process with you are they've all come away with the same viewpoint of just people here are fantastic and everyone is on the same page, which is a rarity. I have interviewed. I've worked with companies where I'll interview the entire leadership team, everyone on the interview panel. And literally, they'll tell you like a different story for each person and what the company even cohesive unit, and actually have the same vision. Maybe they got different thoughts and inputs, but they generally are marching in all the same direction. It's a huge rarity. I'm telling you.
The secret sauce, Rich, is you just have a lot of early morning meetings and a lot of really late nights in Germany and Europe, and you just work really hard. And I think if you work really hard and you grind it out together every day, if you keep doing it over and over again, then I think it works out just fine.
I would agree. I think that is the secret to a good startup. It really is. It's a crazy world when you got people all over the world, and with the success and experience your co-founders have, from HANA and everything else, or just it's an amazing group. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, as far as you fast forward 3 years, where do you see Everest? Where do you see the team? Where do you see the company, clientele? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, I think we've really built an enterprise forward system, and I think we're starting in the mid-market. But I think if you look at the kinds of problems we're taking on, the complex problems that companies want to grow with, that is a company that's tailored toward enterprise use cases in the enterprise. And so where I see the business evolving is continuing to expand our footprint in the SaaS software industry, but from the mid-market over the next 3 years, growing into the enterprise. And I'd say then growing into multiple industries as well. And I'd say that the last part of that, beyond kind of industries and businesses, is really, I think the AI that we have now, we're still fairly early overall in AI, but the impact is so significant. It's even bigger than the impact of the cloud 20, 25 years ago. And what that's going to mean is, I think it's going to lead to people with the business knowledge and technology folks with some business domain knowledge and of course technology skills be able to build applications using the Everest platform to kind of, for other use cases that we're not focused on, faster and more reliably than ever before. So I see a third part of our company really being able to enable through our platform solutions for a variety of use cases that we can't even think about just yet.
Isn't it? Whatever that's coming with AI is crazy. I've told I got 2 kids in college. I told them this summer they've got to take in some kind of AI certification class. It's got to be on your resume. It's not even it's a non-negotiable. It just has to. You've got to know at least you know how to write some good prompts at least, if nothing else. You got to be able to do something.
You got to go further, Rich. It's got more than more. They got to be able to build applications on their own.
Agreed. I agree. You got to start small though. Teenagers and all. So, but 100%, you have to do it. But listen, I think what you guys are building is amazing. I think what you guys are headed are incredible. Anything else? We kind of wrap up. Anything else? We should know about Everest. Whether it's the markets and how you guys are competing that you want to add to the.
Well, we're looking for great people to join us in various parts of the globe, whether it's on the sales side or sales and marketing side or development. And so, yeah, it's 5 years in, but it still feels like we're if in the second inning, if not the first inning. So we need a lot of help and need a lot of great people along the way.
5 years in, but just live, with the last couple of months, and already a great story to tell and great successes, and ROI for the clients. So listen, I appreciate you coming on, and always great to talk to you. So listen, I appreciate it, and I wish you all the luck in the world. And if people want to reach out, best way to get you LinkedIn, or how's the best way to reach people for?
Yeah, LinkedIn's great, and you can just even email me directly at my first name, so Sandeep at everest-erp.com.
Fantastic. Excellent. Hey, Sandeep, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, great to be here. Thank you.
All right, thank you.